Welcome to Mystery Bible. My name is Ken Primus. I am your host. We've been looking at the life of Joseph. We've been following the family of Abraham and watching all of the antics that goes on within the family. We talk about trauma. We've studied tons of that stuff looking at this family. And I've told you guys before, every single one of us are coming from a place of trauma. We are traumatized. Natural birth is very traumatic. And I believe natural birth is simply a natural way to show us what happens to us in the realm of the spirit, that we also have to go through that birth. And the Bible talks about that. We have been looking at it. We are now, according to the Bible, we're at the end of the book of Genesis. After Joseph dies, it closes Genesis in the Bible. But we're going to look at the book of Jasher. We're going to also, I've been reading the account that is with Josephus and the account in the Legend of the Jews, and they're pretty close, and that's why I haven't pulled anything out of those as yet. So let me give you a basic background as to the book of Genesis so far, the time period and so forth. We believe that this was, Moses was given this, the angels sat down and were reciting all of this information to him and giving him the information so that he began to write the Torah. So we know that Genesis was that first book. This was written, it is believed, around 1430 BC, and the time frame of Genesis is roughly about 4004 BC to 1805 BC. And a couple of highlights that was in there. We know Genesis, the creation story was there. Noah's Ark, the Tower of Babel. We know that this was the area and the time that Nimrod was over all of the folks, and he created. Their goal was to get to the heavens so that they can have some fight with God and so forth. I did a study as to the different types of people, because there are several types of people there wanting several different things within that story with the Tower of Babel. And so I wanted you guys to go take a look at that and listen to that episode. We know that Abraham's father was a part of Nimrod's court. We know that they had stuff like that. Abraham was born, and how all it was foreseen and foretold that he would come, and that his lineage would be the ones that will be taking and killing Nimrod and so forth. And it turned out that it was Esau that killed Nimrod. He cut his head off, just like Esau's head was chopped off by Joseph's family as well. Jacob's family. We know Isaac and Jacob, and we know about Joseph and his brother and the trauma that he encountered on his way to becoming the leader of the Egyptian people. So we're going to pick up in 58 of Jasher. When we looked at last, Pharaoh had died, and his son had was ordered to become Pharaoh, or next in line if you were not ordered. And so when Pharaoh died, his son Magron became Pharaoh, and he took over the reign over his father. But his father makes a request before he dies, and let's read that. It says, "And Pharaoh commanded Joseph before his death to be as a father to his son Magron, and that Magron should be under the care of Joseph and under his counsel. And all Egypt consented to this thing, that Joseph should be king over them. For all the Egyptians loved Joseph as of hereto or herebefore. Only Magron, the son of Pharaoh, sat upon his father's throne, and he became king in those days in his father's stead. Magron was 41 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned, it says here in the book of Jasher, for 40 years. He reigned in Egypt, and all Egypt called his name Pharaoh, after the name of his father. And it was their custom to do in Egypt to every king that reigned over them. And I talked about this before. The title Pharaoh was created by a gentleman that was a pretty slick guy. When you hear his story, and I actually did a podcast about him and how he became the first Pharaoh. And he was pretty shrewd in how he caused people he went and he took over a burial ground because he was broke. But he was a smart guy. He took over this burial ground and he made people pay money to bury their dead. So that's where we get that from. And so, as a matter of doing that, he became wealthy. And then the people were complaining to the king at the time, wasn't the Pharaoh, king at the time, what was going on. And when his custom was to come and meet the people for every year when the people came down. And when the king came down and started talking to the people started asking him, why are you charging us money to bury our dead? And that's when he met this guy and they had a conversation. He'd bring him into his court. And that's how that stuff happened. So go back and take a look at that. It's really a fascinating story about this gentleman. So we see that Magron is reigning over. He is now Pharaoh. And it says, it came to pass that when Pharaoh reigned in his father's stead, he placed the law of Egypt and all the affairs of the government into the hands of Joseph and as his father had said. So he turned over, if you will, the day-to-day stuff that the government was handling over to Joseph. In other words, Joseph was running the kingdom at the time. And Joseph became king over Egypt. So we have the Pharaoh, and Joseph became king over Egypt. And that's why it's very fascinating. I wanted to give you guys this picture of the Jewish people before Moses really gets onto the scene, when they are now servants and slaves and so forth. So we know then that a leader, and we'll see it within these pages and from other studies as well, this new leader that comes in and began to steer the entire country away from the Jewish people and leadership. And so they made them slaves. And as a result, God had to come and rescue them, as he promised Abraham that he would. And this was a prophecy several years ago in Abraham's time, when God said he would rescue his people out of Egypt. And so we see that Joseph became king over Egypt, for he was a superintendent over all Egypt, and all Egypt was under his care and under his counsel. For all Egypt inclined to Joseph after the death of Pharaoh, and they loved him exceedingly to reign over them. But there were some people amongst them who did not like him. Isn't this a normal story? There's some people. And we know those that are in our lives personally, that they're always those people, man. And it takes wisdom, but these guys and women are just different, if you will. And they are able to stir up a lot of trouble because of their evil way of thinking. But there was some people amongst them who did not like him, saying, "No stranger shall reign over us." Still the whole government of Egypt devolved in those days upon Joseph after the death of Pharaoh, he being the regulator, doing as he liked throughout the land without anyone interfering. And so I'm telling you, always have people like this. And you see them within the politics of today, absolute corrupt people that don't really care about the people. Joseph has been leading the people for many years through the famine and all these type of stuff. So for them coming and say such nonsense, in verse 7 tells you the corruptness of their heart, because most of them are alive because of him, aren't they? So it's really fascinating. And so you always have an ungrateful bunch of people that you will have to deal with within your life. They're at work, they're in your family, they're some of your friends, but they're there. If you look closely, you'll find them. And all Egypt was under the care of Joseph, and Joseph made war with all his surrounding enemies, and he subdued them. All the land and all the Philistines under the border of Canaan did Joseph subdue, and they were all under his power, and they give a yearly tax unto Joseph. And Pharaoh king of Egypt sat upon his throne in his father's stead, but he was under the control and the counsel of Joseph, as he was the first under the control of his father. So we see that the father was the same. And these people that's starting stuff in verse 7, they're always there whispering in one's ear. Neither did he reign, but the land of Egypt only under the counsel of Joseph. But Joseph reigned over the whole country at that time, from Egypt unto the great rivers, Petra. And Joseph was successful in all his ways, and the Lord was with him, and the Lord gave Joseph additional wisdom and honor and glory and love towards him in the heart of the Egyptians and throughout the land. And Joseph reigned over the whole country 40 years. So I want to take a little breather right here. And you guys have heard me talk about this thing called grace. And when God had given me that revelation about grace, I've mentioned it before, I studied for about a year or so, and then one day I was called to teach on it, and I actually thought I was teaching, or what I was being taught, I thought it was heresy. But what I did was, when I studied the topic, my family and I began to use it, and I began to see results based on this revelation that God had showed me and taught me about the grace of God, what it really means and what it does and so forth. And so from time to time, those that have been following this podcast you've heard me stop and really elaborate a little more about grace when I come across it and I see it openly being displayed in a leader or any situation. And we see it right here within this man's life. The Bible tells us that for by grace are you saved through faith. And I tell people that combination, that process, is how you and I get saved from any situation. It doesn't just belong to salvation, it belongs to salvation. And so the principle is that God's grace, meaning that there are two people that works along in our salvation from any situation, God and you, the individual. The individual's responsibility is their faith. And you don't have to be, all smart and anything like that. You just have to use your faith. And I've said to people, it says, with man, there's limitation, because the scripture says with man, this is not possible with man, but all things are possible with God. So that means that there's no limitation with God. So now how can we access this no limit person? The only way we can do that is by faith. And we know that his grace is the ingredient by which he works on other people's hearts, because he can't violate their will, but he can influence them to make decisions to bring out the outcome that is best for you. And so he does that on our behalf. And we see that Joseph here, God influenced the heart of the people. He gave him wisdom. He gave him some additional stuff, it says, that he needed. And God says, if you need wisdom, ask for me and I'll give it to you liberally. I'll toss it out. So you and I have access to the same things that God was giving him in that time. And he gave him everything. And as a result, he says, the Lord gave Joseph additional wisdom. So you need wisdom, you can get additional honor. He gives you that as well. Glory, he gives you that. And love towards him in the hearts. See, that place where only God can touch by his influence of the Egyptian. And we'll see later on in this story with these people in Egyptian that God comes again and touches the heart of the Egyptians to give over their wealth to the children of Israel when they were leaving in the Exodus, when they were pulling out of Egypt. So we see then that here God, he influenced their heart towards him, the Egyptians, so that they would love him. And throughout the land, and Joseph reigned over the whole country for 40 years. So here we have this Jewish man reigning as king over Egypt for 40 years. And so we're now going to begin to start seeing some of the transition as they begin to move forward, as he's moving off of the stage of life, if you will, when he passes on. So let's continue. And all the countries of the Philistines and the Canaanites and the Zidonians and all the other side of Jordan brought present unto Joseph all his days. and the whole country was in the hand of Joseph. And they brought unto him a yearly tribute, as it was regulated for Joseph, who fought against all his surrounding enemies and subdued them. And the whole country was in the hand of Joseph. And Joseph sat securely upon his throne in Egypt. And also all his brothers, the sons of Jacob, dwelt securely in the land all the days of Joseph. And they were fruitful and multiplied exceedingly, and they served the Lord all their days, as their father Jacob had commanded them. And so we see that there's this mention here that the children of Israel begins to multiply, and we'll see it says fruitful and multiply exceedingly in the land. And this is one of the problems that new Pharaoh is going to recognize, and he's going to actually point to that and says, wait a minute, these people are breeding all over the place and we need to control them. And so he instituted slavery in order to control them. And evil men will always do that. They'll try to make you a slave at your work. They'll try and make you a slave in all of the different things. And what a slave mentality is that you are less than, and that they are your supply, they are your everything. And when you begin to look at that way, that's when they start holding everything over your head. If you don't like this, you do this, you leave, and they start having that type of conversation. And they know you need the job, and so they'll hold it and begin to batter you with it, and so you become a slave to them. Those are evil folks. And so we see then that Joseph and his family, they're all secure, and all is well with them, and they are having a good time. But you got to remember, we're going to go into that as we read that. Remember, there are two of Esau's kids that he brought with him, and we'll talk with them and see what is happening with them in their life as well. And so Joseph sat securely upon his throne in Egypt, and also all of his brethren and sons of Jacob, they dwelled in the land as their father had commanded. So verse 14 reads, And it came to pass at the end of many days and years, when the children of Esau were dwelling quietly in their land, that Bela, their king, that the children of Esau were fruitful and multiply in the land. And they resolved to go and fight with the sons of Jacob and all Egypt, and to deliver their brother Zepho, the son of Eliphaz, and his men, for they were yet in those days slaves to Joseph. Remember the king, this is the African guy that they had, the children of Esau had the African general that they took and made king over them, because they did not want to have any of their people as king over them. And the children of Esau sent unto all the children of the east, and they made peace with them, and all the children of the east came unto them to go with the children of Esau to Egypt to battle. And the children of Esau sent unto all the children of the east, and they made peace with them, and all the children of the east came up to go with the children of Esau to Egypt. And it came to pass unto them of the people of Angus, the king of Dinhabah, and they also sent unto the children of Ishmael, and also they came unto them. So we see this still family, man. Still family, guys. To this day is still family that we're looking in the Middle East. These are all families that the Bible tells us that Ishmael's seed would be, he would be considered a wild animal, if you will, meaning that he would stir up trouble all over and continually. And we see that today as well, that that region is being stirred up by them at all the time. And that's just what God said that they would be, and that's exactly what they're going to be. And because he's God and he knows their nature, just take a look and see for yourself what it says. And that's why I tell people, don't argue with me. I'm just reading, man. That's all I am. So, but take a look for yourself. So we're looking at these guys, and let's take a look. And so the children of Esau is getting all the people, Ishmael and his people. They're all going to come, and all the people assembled and came unto Seir to assist the children of Esau in their battle. And this camp was very large and heavy with people, numerous as the sands of the sea, about 8,000 men, infantry and cavalry. And all those troops went down to Egypt to fight with the sons of Jacob, and they encamped by Ramses. First time we see that name. And Joseph went forth with his brethren and the mighty men of Egypt, about 600 men, and they fought with them in the land of Ramses, and the sons of Jacob at that time again fought with the children of Esau in the 50th year of the sons of Jacob going down to Egypt. That is the 13th year of the reign of Bela over the children of Esau in Seir. And the Lord gave all the mighty men of Esau and the children of the east into the hands of Joseph and his brethren, and all the people of the children of Esau and the children of the east were smitten before Joseph. And the people of Esau and the children of the east that were slain there fell before the sons of Jacob, about 200,000 men. And their king Bela, the son of Beor, fell with them in the battle. And when the children of Esau saw that their king had fallen in the battle and was dead, their hands became weak in the combat. And so we see where you get that strategy of taking out the king, and the response is that the men's hand would get weak. So you see there's a lot of killing over here. These guys, Esau and his people, constantly, and I get it, but sometimes you just gotta let bygones be bygones, as they say. And the Lord gave all these guys over, and all the people over to Joseph and his brothers, and they destroyed them. And Joseph and his brethren and all Egypt were still smiting the people of the house of Esau, and all Esau's people were afraid, and the sons of Jacob, and fled from them before them. And Joseph and his brothers and all Egypt pursued them a day's journey, and they slew yet from them about 300 men, counting to smite them in the road, and afterwards turned back from them. And Joseph and all of his brethren returned to Egypt. Not one was missing from them, but of the Egyptians that fell, only 12 men. And when Joseph returned to Egypt, he ordered Zepos and his men to be additionally bound, and they bound them in irons, and they increased their grief. And all the people of the children of Esau and the children of the east, numbered in shame, each unto his city, and all the mighty men that were with them had fallen in battle. And when the children of Esau saw that their king had died in battle, they hastened and took a man from the people of the children of the east, and his name was Jobab, the son of Zarach, from the land of Borah, and they caused him to reign over them instead of Bela, their king. You remember they had made that pact that none of their people. And Jobab sat upon the throne of Bela as king in his stead, and Jobab reigned in Edom over all the children of Esau 10 years. And the children of Esau went no more to fight with the sons of Jacob from that day forward. For the sons of Esau knew the valor of the sons of Jacob, and they were greatly afraid of them. But from that day forward, the children of Esau hated the sons of Jacob, and the hatred and enmity were very strong between them all the days unto this day. And that's why I told you guys this is family stuff that outsiders are trying to get family to come to the table and sit down and talk. But we see their state of mind from generation to generation. It says Esau hated the sons of Jacob, and the hatred and enmity were very strong between them all the days until this very day. It hasn't changed. And we're looking at an ancient people with an ancient grudge that refuses to come and let go of all of that hatred. And it is going to peak at some point in time. We know that the Antichrist coming is going to come out of this group of people and so forth. We know that there's going to be hell let loose on Israel. We know that Russia, Gog, Magog, we know that these guys are going to come through Turkey, that area where they have, they're going to lift that, there's an area where it leads right into Armageddon. For some reason, I'm losing my thought on it. But anyway, they're going to pull that up, and they're going to dry that area where they have all the water. And that's the area that they're going to walk to come against Israel. And they're going to be heading to the garden, not to the garden, to Armageddon. And that valley of Armageddon, they are going to have this war against Israel. And the Bible tells us they're going to be almost to the point where they will prevail over Israel. And then it tells us that Jesus is going to show up. They're going to look upon him. The Jewish people are going to look at him. They're going to see the mark in his hand. They're going to realize they're going to touch him. One is going to touch him and say, wait a minute, this is our Messiah. And the Bible tells us that Jesus is going to rain some pain down on all those folks. He said he's going to speak a word and their flesh is going to melt off of them. It tells us that particular area, that the blood of mankind is going to be to the bridle of the horse. I want you guys to stop for a minute and think about that, because that means that the ground is saturated so much with blood of mankind that it becomes this all the way to the bridle of a horse. That is a lot of people that is going to be wiped out. And so it says that Jesus is going to open his mouth and he's going to speak a word, and people are going to start melting, and all kinds of wonderful things are going to happen. This Jesus, the Bible says, this same Jesus that the disciples, and so they were very specific in that word. This same Jesus, this same one that we hung, crucified, and walk around, healed, the sick, and all of that, this same one is going to be coming back again. Not another Jesus, because Jesus said they're going to come in my name, but they're all false. But the Bible says this same Jesus is going to be coming again, guys. So get yourself together. Those that are not born again, you need to get yourself together. And we see that now that it says that, let's take a look and see what happens here. So because we're heading into this space where they are going to, the children of Israel is going to be moved to become slaves. And we see that until this day, these guys, it said the hatred and the enmity were very strong between them all the days unto this day. And it came to pass after this, at the end of 10 years, Jacob, the son of Zachar from Bothrat, died, and the children of Esau took a man whose name was Cushan from the land of Teman, and they made him king over them instead of Jobab. And Cushan reigned in Edom over all the children of Esau for 20 years. So we're seeing the lineage and the movement of the stuff that is happening in Esau's family. And Joseph, king of Egypt, and his brethren, and all the children of Israel dwelt securely in Egypt in those days, together with all the children of Joseph and his brethren, having no hindrance or evil accident. And the land of Egypt was at the time at rest from war in the days of Joseph and his brothers. Chapter 59. And these are the names of the sons of Israel who dwelt in Egypt, who had come with Jacob. All the sons of Jacob came unto Egypt, every man with his household. I believe that information is in not Genesis, Exodus. Exodus begins to talk about these guys, and I think it's either the end of Genesis or the beginning of Exodus. I can't remember exactly, but it gives us the lineage as to these men and who they were and so forth in this family as they continue to expand and become numerous upon the land. So it gives us all the names, the sons of Benjamin, Bela, and it gives all the different names that these guys were there, and you can read that for yourself. And all the souls that went forth from the loins of Jacob were 70 souls. These are they who came with Jacob, their father, unto Egypt to dwell there. So we see that Jacob had a busy loin, 70 souls, and Joseph and all his brethren dwelt securely in Egypt. And they ate at the best of Egypt all the days of the life of Joseph. And Joseph lived in the land of Egypt 93 years, and Joseph reigned over all Egypt 80 years. And when the days of Jacob drew near that he should die, he sent and called for his brothers and all his father's household. And they all came together and sat before him. You know what? I love that picture with these older men in the Bible. They all knew when their time was coming, and they were granted that time where they can sit down with their family and have that last conversation They blessed people. They did several different things. It's really a beautiful picture that one's family, and we all are hoping to do that. Very few of us get a chance to do that. But we see that Joseph is calling all his brothers, all of his people, and they tell him to come before him. And Joseph said unto his brethren and unto the whole of his father's household, Behold, I die, and God will surely visit you and bring you up from this land to the land which he swore to your fathers to give unto you. Here comes the promise again. This is the promise that God had given to Abraham, and he is reminding them through Joseph of the promise. And it shall be when God shall visit you to bring you up from here to the land of your fathers, then bring up my bones with you from here. And Joseph made his sons, the sons of Israel, to swear for their seed after them, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall bring up my bones with you from here. And it came to pass after this, that Joseph died in that year, the 71st year of the Israelites going down to Egypt. And Joseph was 110 years old when he died in the land of Egypt. And all his brethren and all his servants rose up and embalmed Joseph, as was their custom. And his brethren and all Egypt mourned over him for 70 days. And they put Joseph in a coffin filled with spice and all sorts of perfume, and they buried him by the side of the river, that is, Seher, and his sons and all his brethren and the whole of his father's household made a 7-day mourning for him. And it came to pass after the death of Joseph, all the Egyptians began in those days to rule over the children of Israel. And Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who reigned in his father's stead, took all the laws of Egypt and conducted the whole government of Egypt under his counsel, and he reigned securely over his people. And so we're seeing the beginning of that shift that we talk about. And so we will pick up next one in Jasher 60. We're going to read through and finish this, and then we will it will walk into the book of Exodus. And when I get there, based on the readings that takes place with the book of Jasher, we're going to stop, and then I'm going to give you an overview of the book of Exodus, some of the main points that we will see as we go through to that story, including the birth of Moses and all the fantastic stuff that happens and so forth. And then we are going to continue our journey through the Bible and get to know who we are in Christ, man, and what God has done for us, but also through this family. It will encourage you and I that we are just like them. They suffer just like us. They're a mess and traumatized just like us. They're dysfunctional just like us. And so, knowing that, hey guys, we know that there's a God that loves us anyway, that we are able to go and have a conversation with him, because he did say we can come and let's reason together. So we're able, you and I, to come and sit down and talk to God face to face, and we actually don't need a priest to do that. So I'm just saying. Anyway, I want to thank you for listening to the podcast, following me. Those that are listening on YouTube, just like us, subscribe, comment, whatever you want to do. Let people know about us. Those that are listening to us through all the other different social media platforms, Twitter and all the different places. I want to thank you. Again, those that are supporting me financially for this, because I know I've told you guys that I am now doing this full time. I have 2 other podcasts that I do. One is called Blueprint of Faith, and that I deal specifically with Christians and the principles of faith and all of those different teachings and so forth. We do that. And then there's another called Threads of Enlightenment. Threads of Enlightenment is where I sit down with people from all walks of life. I interview them as to how did they achieve what they did. We interview famous people, all kinds of different people from different walks of life that suffered hardship, and they walked through their journey, and they are now able to, what I believe is the ultimate prize that we get to do here on this planet, is to become a servant and to serve mankind through our lives and what we do, how we speak, how we act and behave, and all of these different things. So these are the things that I'm doing, And I do these things full time, and I really appreciate all the help financially that people do, because I do appreciate it, and I do use it for equipment and all the other things that I do as well. Because we're doing a couple of things. We're trying to go to video and audio, so you guys will get a chance to see my face. So we're looking into pricing all of those things and working with companies to make sure that we're able to do that. I want to thank you again for coming to Mystery Bible. Thank you, and God bless you. And study to show yourself approved so that you can understand who you are, and so that we can change this world, man.